There it is, Saints and Sinners, issue number 1, the anthology, which includes, I believe, 6 different short stories written by various artists and writers. Um, I got this together with my Horseman Back to Action comic and Yara issue number 3. I decided to review this first because it's what everyone is doing right now. So the first up is Chasing Ghosts, written by As from Heel vs. Babyface, and the art is done by 2 Brazilian gentlemen whose name I'm not gonna bother trying to pronounce. First off, I want to say writing a comic book is hard. It's especially hard if you're new to it, and it's even harder when you only get 15 pages to work with. And I think it shows here how difficult it can be. Overall, I want to make some quick points about the art. I think it's pretty decent art. There were some panels I was like this one I was impressed by, and there were some panels I had slight criticisms on. For example, the panel where Bloodruth is appearing right here. And there's something about the nose that makes it look like a cat nose. I'm not sure. I think it's because of the shadow. But there's minor issues in the short story like this. No big glaring mistakes or things that I couldn't make out. There's also panels that I really enjoyed, like the one right here. It's very well done. Another slight point of criticism, I don't know if this is directed at the artist, but I don't really like the font here, and I saw it later on in the Saints and Sinners comic. So in other comics, I saw some fonts being used on nameplates like this, traffic signs, or building signs, where I was like, that seems off. Yeah, but overall, I think it was pretty solid for art wise. There were some panels I really enjoyed, and some panels I didn't quite enjoy. Next up, the story itself. I think that As made it harder on himself than he should have. I'll explain it a bit, but first I want to mention some things I really liked about this comic. First off, the relationship Ingrid has with Detective Briggs. Briggs seems to be hostile towards her, but Ingrid is not really hostile, whereas in the past she would be. But I concluded that is probably because her experience with Wilkins. She used to be a bit, you could say mean to him initially, and maybe she regrets it and wants to better her, dynamic with the cops or detectives because of it. So I picked up on that. I liked a little bit of character growth. What I also liked was the fight scenes from Ingrid. Her use of the wires is really cool. I believe it's called wire casting. There's some really cool techniques used. There's a panel, for example, where she blocks shots with her wires, which is very creative. I also liked her using her investigative skills. In Alpha Core, it's apparent that she has a strong emphasis on investigation, acquiring information, documentation, etc. And it's used here. So As did do his homework about Ingrid. I really like the motor. I think it's called the Apex. It's really cool. It's a really good idea for the only hero of the Alpha Core that can fly to have another means of travel. That being said, I did wanted to see it used more, but I would gladly see it come back in the future because that was really cool. Another thing that I liked, I'm not sure if it was intentional, but I believe they're called the ghosts, as mentioned in the little foreword he did. These two, their outfits, they kind of remind me of the Ghostbusters. I'm not sure if it's intentional, but anyway, that really that really did it for me. I really like that. And in the end, the moment where, without spoiling it, where Ingrid reflects on what happened and chats with the person who isn't there anymore. I really like that moment. That was a really personal moment, and it acknowledges what happened in the past and that she's still thinking about it. So there's also a bunch of critique I have here. For example, since we're on this page, I'll start here. I don't need every Rippaverse character to show up in every Rippaverse story. I'm not sure if this is directed at Az or the Rippaverse in general, but I mentioned this in my previous review. Let's see, which was that? The Great War of Separation 2. No, that's not correct. I mean, Catch and Kill. Yeah, there, Michael and Lillian show up, and they seem to be showing up everywhere. And now, Bloodroot shows up in a story about Ingrid. And if I look at the story, she doesn't need to be there, like at all. There's ways she could have done it without having her pop off. We know these characters exist, and I think we're already invested enough into our own themes. So if I want to read horror, I'm gonna read a Bloodroth. If I want to do a cop superheroes, I'm gonna read Alpha Core. But I didn't need to see her. I think they could have used the page for more investigation or more clearer investigation. The biggest issue I have with this little story is, as seemed to have said, instantly he wanted to do the Ingrid Valdez story, which I respect. It's cool. It's a cool character, and I get. But then in his foreword, he says he also had an idea when he was young, which he wanted to tie in here. And I think, and then I'm mentioning the ghosts characters. And I think this is a bit much for a 15-page story, because now we don't just have an Ingrid story, but also a ghost story. As far as I can tell, the ghosts aren't necessarily evil people, because they go after mobs and gangsters and stuff. And I think that's what we have to take away from it. But I think both storylines just gave me a bit too little. I think it was too little pages to execute this well. Also, like I said before, Ingrid does do some investigation, which is cool. However, she seems to be seeing things that I do not pick up on as the reader. She seems to give a lot of exposition. Like, for example, there's a panel here where she says there were two killers, because they were dropped parallel. But then again, there's no bullet wounds, so, and you're in a world of accept, so there might just be an accept, for example, who can kill you when you look them in the eye. They don't know that, so she jumps to conclusions, which I cannot relate to initially, and there's more of that in the other page as well. So this is where it would be cool if you had a really a help from a really experienced writer and an artist to back up what you're trying to convey. Also, I feel like my expectations for this comic book weren't really met. Um, for some reason, I thought the Apex bike would be in this more, and when I read the foreword and we saw the artwork, initial artwork, I thought she was going to team up with the characters. Even when I read the little foreword, I thought she was going to team up with people who were called the Ghosts, but apparently they were gonna get teamed up against each other, and both had a story to tell that didn't really fit. Um, Finally, at the start, I didn't really know what was going on during this investigation scene. There was a lot of explanation, but I couldn't really place the explanation. I was just nodding along, like, okay. And by the end of the comic, no questions I had were answered, and more questions were raised. And I didn't really know what I got out of this, aside from getting introduced to some cool characters or cool concepts. Um, yeah, but overall, I would say there's a lot of criticism, but I couldn't do this any better. So I'll give it a reread later. But first, I have to read the other comics as well. But I would say it's a nice initial try. I would love to see more of Ingrid. She's a likable character, and her motorcycle is really cool. The ghosts, they certainly did leave an impression. I'm not sure what impression it is, but do I want to see more? Yeah, because they did some pretty cool shit. Sorry for swearing. And yeah, I'm excited to see more of them and of him. So yeah,